You don't need a 450. I've ridden everything from 125 two-strokes to big bad 450s on motocross tracks, but here's the truth. Most riders don't need all that power. Today, I'm going to explain why getting a 450 could possibly be one of the worst decisions you could make, and what you should do instead. This one's probably going to ruffle some feathers, so grab your favorite snack, strap in, and be sure to watch until the end. Then continue the conversation in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yes, a 450 does sound impressive, but all that power is hard to handle, especially for someone just starting out. But why should you listen to me anyway? Well, I've been riding dirt bikes for over 20 years, and I've learned a lot along the way. I started out on a PW50, I also had an XR50 that I putted around on all kinds of trails. Then I moved up to a KX65, which was when I learned how to use the clutch for the first time, and I got an introduction to the two-stroke power band. Then I went to a CR85, where I got more familiar with riding small bore two-strokes. Plus, this was the first bike which I completed my first ever motocross race on. At that time, I started to get way too big for my 85, so I ended up moving up to a YZ125. This is where I really started to learn the importance of riding in the right gear and RPM range. I rode that bike in the woods and on the motocross track, which really improved my clutch and throttle control, corner speed, and my ability to carry momentum effectively. Now, it was around that time when I tried out my first 250 4-stroke motocross bike, and holy crap, I was hooked. I ended up getting one of my own, and I really enjoyed learning the differences in the way you ride a 2-stroke versus a 4-stroke race bike. Having all that power available in the 4-stroke, basically all the way through the RPM range, led to a completely different riding style. I've also had many opportunities to ride other people's 250 2-strokes and 450 4-strokes over the years. Now let me tell you, one of the best and most eye-opening things you could do if you ever get the chance is to ride a 125 2-stroke, a 250 4-stroke, and a 450 back to back to back. I mean, maybe even throw a 250 2-stroke in there too. Basically just ride a bunch of different bikes back to back, because doing this is probably the most effective way to help anyone understand the pros and cons of each bike. Now, I've done this plenty of times, and this is what led me to this conclusion, which I'm going to talk about in the video here. But here's the main thing. Each rider has a completely different story. Not everyone started out like me riding on a PW50 when they were 4 years old. Not everyone has access to motocross tracks. And at the same time, a lot of people strictly ride motocross and they never touch the woods. This really plays into the likely unexpected reason I'd advise against getting a 450, which actually has nothing to do with the downsides of a 450 at all. But first, let's briefly discuss those downsides because I think they are important, and then we'll get into my curveball after that. Now, in my experience of riding 450s and other bikes as well, a 450 is way too much power for the average rider. I would consider myself an average rider. All that power means you're going to be holding on for dear life when you crack the throttle, which is going to end up leading to more fatigue way faster than smaller bikes. What happens when you get tired and you end up giving the bike more throttle than you intended? Well, things start to get ugly. Some people may also say that because a 450 is heavier, it's not as nimble and agile to corner or get around tighter technical terrain, but honestly, in my experience, which will probably translate to most average riders as well, a 450 isn't really that noticeably less maneuverable than a 250 4-stroke. I mean, if you're going for tenths of seconds trying to shave off your lap times on a motocross track, that might be a different story, but in my experience, this point is kind of negligible. So then, what's my biggest complaint with the disadvantages of the 450? It's not really the too much power issue, because even a beginner will eventually learn how to control that power. Whiskey throttling on any bike can get out of hand really quickly for that matter, so the 450's power is not really the big issue here. Maneuverability, like I said, not something I really noticed that much. My biggest issue with most people getting on 450s is they kind of make you lazy. I mean, having all that power, basically all the power you'd ever need in any gear, means you won't be forced to learn things like clutch control, carrying momentum, being in the proper gear, the proper RPM range. And these are very valuable skills to know on a dirt bike. That's really what it comes down to, in my opinion, on the downsides of a 450. That's why I wouldn't recommend a 450 to the average rider, because they just won't help you improve like other bikes will. But there's also another issue that I have, and it's less with 450s themselves, but more so with the people who often tell you that you should get a 450. See, I've been posting reels on Instagram recently, and they've gotten quite a bit of traction, to the point where I'm starting to see a lot more troll comments and typical bro advice that you get on those social media platforms. And as frustrating as these comments are, they really highlight a common mindset within the dirt bike riding community that, to be honest, is extremely toxic and unhelpful, especially for those of us who are just riding to have fun, and also for beginners who are just getting into the sport and still learning how everything works. I mean, these idiots in the comments spend so much time worrying about what bike everyone else has because they're tough and they can handle a big, powerful dirt bike, bro. I mean, here, just listen to some of the actual comments I've gotten. Grow a pair, get a 450. I mean, I've heard that one countless times. Just get a 252 stroke. There they are, telling me what bike I should have. And time to man up and ride a 250 or 300. 125s are for little kids and the misses. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you know my thoughts on 125s. They're awesome bikes. And these comments are just I don't even know what to say. They're just dumb. And I've been hearing this crap my entire life. It started out with the insecure bullies in middle school, and it clearly doesn't stop there because these are full-grown adults leaving these comments online. So let me just say one thing. It doesn't fucking matter what bike someone has, okay? If they have a big bike, great. If they have a 125, great. If they ride a fucking pit bike, amazing. The whole point here is we want to have fun riding dirt bikes. So take your insecurity elsewhere if the only thing you have to share is criticism of what bike someone else has. And then there's this bike is faster than that bike crowd, okay? I can't tell you how many times I've heard things like, a 252 stroke is faster than a 450, or insert whatever bike versus whatever bike here. They always say one bike is faster than the other. It's usually the bike that they had, and it's the only experience they've ever had on any dirt bike, and they just say, well, my 1986 CR 125 was faster than all the 500s out. It's stupid, okay? Guess what? These people also don't know what the they're talking about, all right? Speed is a horrible metric to measure the suitability of a bike unless all you're doing is riding on the road or like in the desert. The reason it's a horrible metric is because you can gear a really powerful bike to have a ton of torque and a really low top speed, or you can also gear an underpowered bike to have a ton of top speed. So speed literally does not translate as a metric when you take these bikes off-road. I mean, you can pretty much modify any bike to be whatever speed you want. So yeah, that just makes that point irrelevant. Now, the biggest difference you'll feel when you're riding different bikes is how the bike delivers power. Does it do so smoothly? Is there a narrow range in the RPMs where the power hits, like a 125? Or is it consistent throughout the delivery, like on a 4-stroke motocross bike? So I guess my point is, if someone just offhand tells you something like, man up and get a 450, bro, or my bike is faster than yours, this is not a person that you want to be taking advice from. Okay, sorry, rant over, but now let's get into why someone might actually want a 450. And if not, how does one figure out what bike they really should get? This is a bit confusing, especially if you're newer to riding and you don't have a lot of experience trying out a bunch of different bikes. As I mentioned before, the thing you need to understand is that nobody's story is the same. Some of you watching this might be younger kids and you're still riding mini bikes like, 85s or like 150 big wheels or something like that. And this isn't going to apply to you until you get a little bit bigger and you start to move up to big bikes. Some of you might be adults that have literally never touched a dirt bike in their entire life. So that's going to lead to you picking a completely different dirt bike. And, you might be an older guy who took a long break and you just want something that's easy to ride. So all of these factors come into play whenever you're deciding what bike you should get. You can't really prescribe one bike for everyone. I mean, I wish it was that simple. If all you do is desert riding and you're a heavier rider, hell, you'd be a great candidate for a 450. If you're racing motocross competitively and you want to race in a 450 class or an open class, well, of course, obviously you're going to want to be on a 450 or at the very least a 350 to be competitive. If all you do is super technical enduro riding, well, you're probably going to want something like an enduro spec 250 or 300 two-stroke. If you do fast-paced cross-country racing like GNCCs, then a 254 stroke would probably suit you well. Let's say you're an intermediate rider or a beginner motocross rider looking to improve your skills and learn solid fundamentals. Well, in that case, I'd highly recommend a 125 two-stroke or a 254 stroke over a 450 any day of the week, because those bikes are going to teach you much more about fundamentals and skills than a 450 will. Now, let's say you don't want to do any sort of challenging riding. If you're just looking to go out and putt around in the field or on the quad trails with your buddies, then you'd be a great candidate for something like an air-cooled trail bike. A lot tamer, a very nice and easy power delivery that makes these bikes really fun and chill to ride. Now, obviously, if you're competing at a high level in any sort of off-road racing and you feel personally like you need a 450 to be competitive, first off, why the hell are you still watching this video? But second, of course, you know your situation best, and you probably do need a 450 in that case. And also, like, maybe you just want a 450 because you think it's cool, and that's perfectly fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I could go on and on and on about all the different factors that go into which bike you should or shouldn't get, and I'd still never cover all the reasons. The real point of this video is not to tell you what bike you should get or you should never get a 450, even though that's what I said in the title. These are just my opinions, but what it really comes down to, I'll probably never tell someone, don't get this bike, don't get that bike, or you should be on X bike. If you come to me and you want to know what I think, I'm going to ask you, what type of riding do you do? What type of experience do you have? How tall are you? These things are necessary to answer the question of what bike is the best fit for you. I'm not just going to give you some blanket statement, you would like this bike, you would like X bike. I feel like knowledge, critical thinking, learning about the bikes and how they operate, trying as many different bikes as you can, that is the best way to figure out what you actually need. And if you can just please ignore all the assholes in the comments or anywhere else in your real life as well, telling you, man up and get X bike, get Y bike, get a bigger 450, bro, you riding a little kid's bike. Just tell them to fuck off, okay? Because their opinion is kind of irrelevant at that point if all they're going to do is try to bully you about what bike you're riding. Like I said, the real point of this video is to dispel any of that stupid macho bullshit that we all too often see in the comments and remind you that at the end of the day, we just want to have fun on dirt bikes. That's the whole point. I really hope this helped you in some way. I mean, maybe you have a better idea of what bike you want to get. Maybe you feel more confident to tell some asshole trying to bully you about what bike you have to fuck off. If you want more common sense dirt bike riding advice from me, that's what I try to do here on this channel. Make sure you check out my video on 60 brutal truths every dirt bike rider should know, because it's packed with hard-earned lessons, beginner mistakes, and mindset shifts, kind of like this one, that'll seriously level up your riding, no matter what bike you're on. Oh, and since you made it all the way to the end, I've got a little thank you for you. I'm giving away free Moto stickers to dedicated viewers like you. Just hit the first link in the description, and I'll send one your way.